This is an update on destructible walls. In my last update, I had shown how I created hidden rooms, and as part of that I had destructible walls to access those rooms. And as I'm not creating a game where all the tiles are destructible, I just needed a few destructible pieces so that you could dash into the wall and break it, kind of like in Celeste. I decided let's not mess with the tile map for that. Let's just create the destructible walls as game objects, and then add the sprites of the wall pieces to them. So that's what I have here. And in the last video, it works for creating destructible walls, but as you can see here, you run into an issue where the pixels do not line up, even though you have everything lined up as far as you can in the scene. And this isn't 100%. Like, for example, I jumped 20 times to reproduce this. Now, if you just jump up here, most of the time, the character does not snag. But once in a while, the character does, and obviously that doesn't work. If it happens 1 out of 100,000 times, it's still not acceptable. So it's similar to the issue if you try to set up a tile map and you don't use a composite collider. So if you look here, go to the square, so you can see this collider is for the object, and then this collider is for the tile map. And they look lined up, but the closer you get, oh, too close, go back. But if you go back, you can see this composite collider actually isn't lined up perfectly. I don't know if there's a way to fix this. I don't know. It seems from Googling, this is a common problem people have. But yeah, so since there's just this minor difference, and when you're up close, it looks like a huge difference. It looks like this collider's way over here, and this one's way over here. It's like, how many pixels is this? It's like, well, that's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a pixel, because, this is one pixel here. So things just do not line up perfectly. So the only way to seem to get completely smooth movement is when you're using these composite colliders. So basically what I'm saying is my last implementation just wasn't going to work for destructible walls, because placing objects that are supposed to be perfectly lined up with the wall won't work, because as you're sliding down the wall, you'll snag on it once in a while. So I ended up going on down a big rabbit hole trying to learn about tile maps and creating custom tiles so I could create destructible tiles. I ended up going with a simpler solution for what I'm doing, but I will probably continue to look into creating custom tiles. But real quick, so this is also a destructible wall here. The difference is, find it, within the hidden room I have this destructible wall object. It's just a box collider that's set to a trigger. So basically the wall pieces are on the platform's tile map, which is my main tile map. I had first tried, I was like, oh, I'll just create a separate tile map for destructible walls, but that obviously doesn't solve the problem, because since it's on a different tile map, when you apply the composite collider, it won't be joined with the platform tile map, so you won't get this smooth line. You'll still get a break between the tiles. So the tiles have to be on the same tile map as my regular wall pieces. So instead of creating custom tiles that can be destroyed, I instead opted for the solution where I simply, much like the secret room, I place a collider around the tiles that I will want to be destructible. And I use this as not only a trigger to see when the player's touching those, but also as a bounding box to denote the tiles. So basically I have a script attached to this. So wherever I want to create a destructible wall, I would prefab this, and then I would take this and I would put it around whatever tiles I want to be destructible, and then they would be destructible because of the script. So the script is very simple. It's just taking the tile map and then the box collider, and then we just create a bounds int from the box collider using the minimum bounds of the collider and the size of the collider. And then just like in the last video, adding 1 to the Z so that we can get all of the tiles on the 0 index for Z, from 0 to 1. So, because all my tiles are Z on the Z plane are at 0. So once I have that bound, I loop through all of the tiles at the start and I change their color. So this is simply just because I want my destructible tiles to be a different color, slightly different color, so the player can kind of denote that they're destructible. And then I just check on collision, I just set all the tiles in the tile map to null that are at these points within this bounding box. So if I play, you can see their color changes because that color is now applied. Exposed it here, so that's where this color is pulling. Tile color is just a serialized field, and then I just set it here. And then these, as soon as I run into this, it runs this code to set those tiles to null. Now this solution works for me, and I will probably continue to use this solution because I just want to create a few destructible walls in a level that will be for like these secret rooms. But if you wanted to create like large sections of destructible tiles, you want to have a very interactive game where you could interact with the environment and destroy tons of tiles. This wouldn't be a good solution for that. For that, you'd probably want to actually create destructible tiles, which I'll probably still experiment with, and if I get it working, I'll create a video on it. But for that, it looks like what you'd want to do is you'd want to create these scriptable tiles. So you'd want to inherit from tile base, or a class that inherits from tile base, which in their example, they just inherit from tile. Tile inherits from tile base. And then the main function or the method that you need to implement is the get tile data, because that's what's actually used to draw your tiles on the map. This took me forever to figure out, and I still don't 100% understand it because the documentation, at least for me, is pretty iffy and lacking and also confusing. It's a weird name for it because if you look at tile base, get tile data retrieves any tile rendering data from the scripted tile. It returns void because you pass it a reference, and then it returns the tile data to that. You set the data in there. So You need to implement this though. So for example, this is them implementing their own custom tiles, but you would need to pass it all of this tile data and then edit that tile data further in the get tile data. So they're just setting the sprite. So my idea is basically to, not sure if this is possible, but I would create destructible tile that just has one additional thing. It's, a Boolean to denote that it's destructible. And my plan was to essentially at the start go through all of the tiles that I want to be destructible and replace them. So basically I would go through and replace any tiles with destructible tiles. But I don't know if that's any more performant. Ideally what you'd want to do is you'd want your custom tiles that you create to be here in the actual tile palette, and you could place them. So you're not running that and swapping out tiles. You're not like detecting and saying, okay, replace all the tiles in this section. It'd be better to just place them. I don't know if that's possible or not. I think it might be. It's something I haven't looked into hardly at all yet. Where is it? But if you look here, it says if Unity editor. I'm not sure what this means. I don't know if you can actually make any changes so that things show up in the editor. I mean, visually it looks like it, so maybe you can create custom, scriptable tiles that will show up in your tile palette. That would be ideal. So that's what I'm going to look into. Probably not right now because I don't really need it for my game. So I'm going to move on to some other things, but I plan to come back to it because I'm definitely interested in it. Another last thing I found real quick while I was looking into all of this is that Unity does have a reference, a GitHub reference to their code, which is pretty cool. I didn't know this existed when I was trying to look into some of this stuff, like the get tile data and how tile base and tile is used in tile maps. This was definitely helpful to go through. So if you don't know about this, then yeah, now you do, and you can check it out if you're trying to learn more about how they implemented something. So like, for example, you can look and see how tile, you can see that, tile inherits from tile base, which, they say in the documentation, but you can see exactly what it does is it really just adds these, sprites, color, transform game objects that don't exist in tile base. Tile base just has a bunch of virtual methods, and then it overrides just one method, which is the get tile data method. So yeah, that's an update. I think I'm done for now with my hidden rooms and destructible walls. I'll come back later to add things like animations. I just want to get kind of functionality working for now. But yeah, that's it on that.